Hello and welcome to another episode of the Football History Boys on YouTube. Now, following the recent news of Jurgen Klopp's departure from Liverpool at the end of the season, we thought it was about time to do another Tier Maker special, and we are looking closely today at the greatest managers from football history. There are 12 managers today that are going to be going under the microscope in our 5 different tiers. We have the GOAT tier for the best manager of all time. We have the legendary tier, an influential tier, a successful tier, and finally, maybe controversial, but an overrated tier as well. Do you want to know the 12 managers?
Go on.
The 12 managers are Jose Mourinho, Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Ernst Haaland, Sir Alex Ferguson, Bela Gutmann, Carlo Ancelotti, Johan Cruyff, Sir Matt Busby, Brian Clough, Rinus Michels, and finally, Liverpool's former great manager, Bob Paisley. Shall we get started?
Let's kick right off.
Any initial thoughts?
I think it's quite a good range of football history here. We want to go right back to sort of the 1950s as our earliest ones, right up to modern day. It's difficult to compare across eras, but we're going to have a good crack at it.
I think it's also important to note that these are club managers. We're looking at what they've done for their clubs rather than any sort of spells at international management as well. So who should we get started with? Let's get started with, because he's first on here, Jose Mourinho. Got to be one of the most controversial managers, definitely splits opinion.
Yeah.
Some love him, usually the people who usually fans from the teams that he's managed. A lot of people hate him. Probably had his heyday probably up until about 2012 around then, and then since then I think he's definitely fallen away a little bit.
Yeah, you can feel his career coming towards its end, really, isn't it?
Of course, and started off as a translator, didn't he, at Barcelona, and then of course became this. When he came as manager of Porto, it stunned everyone. He won the Champions League in 2004, won the UEFA Cup the season before, and it did revolutionise the game at that point because no one had seen anything like him before.
The charisma of him was ridiculous, wasn't it, when he came over, announced himself as a special one. Yeah. Obviously that became the special one as his nickname he was given at Chelsea. But really what he did with Chelsea, establishing them as this giant club, was special. Yeah. It was special.
Yeah, and you're right, because obviously the money came into Chelsea and, a lot of managers might have had that budget. And we've seen managers, these days have even bigger budgets probably, and they don't do so well. So that he came in, took that club and did it exactly how he wanted. He does definitely play that kind of, almost like Catenaccio 2.0, isn't it? Yeah. It's like a modern day Catenaccio style, that park the bus or park the aeroplane, as he said famously. Yeah. It's quite a negative style of play. It's not nice to watch. It's often quite dirty. Likes to get around the referee.
The whole thing is about you against the world, really, isn't it? Your team against the world, your fans against the world. And the Chelsea fans at the time absolutely loved him and still do, despite what came afterwards. And the Chelsea players, you listen to interviews with some of the players at the time, people like Lampard and Terry, and they adored everything about Mourinho, didn't they?
I guess, but the thing about Mourinho is man management style probably isn't the best for other teams, and he usually falls out with people and gets kicked out, and that's what happens.
Very short spells, isn't it? The third season for him is often the one where it goes wrong. It's happened to him at Roma recently.
Another recent departure as well,
Immense success winning the Europa League with them, but then... or the Conference League also, and then leaving, in acrimonious circumstances again.
No, he's definitely not the GOAT.
No, of course not.
We might say legendary in the future if we were looking at this in 20, 30 years' time.
As a character, maybe one of the most definitely colourful.
Yeah, he was influential for his spell, but I think in the game, I'd say he's definitely more. I think the successful cut.
Incredibly successful. You hire him to win your trophies, isn't he? That's who you hired him for. Now I know Spurs tried it didn't work for them, but near enough every other club have hired him to win trophies, and even Man United in their spell under after Sir Alex, when they've gone through managers, he was the most successful of this post-Ferguson era.
That's a good point. Yeah, he won a couple more there. Yeah. So successful.
I think successful. I think not as influential as some that we'll talk about.
Okay, fab. Let's move on then to the other recent news. Jurgen Klopp has had to leave Liverpool. Let's look at him and what he has done in his impressive managerial career.
Started at Dortmund, didn't he?
Well, started at Mainz. Mainz first.
Dortmund was where he sort of exploded onto the scene. So Mainz first. And then, for the European football fans, Dortmund was where when you heard about it.
And they came out of nowhere at the time, didn't they? Because they were a club that was struggling for quite a long time.
Always in the shadow of the likes of Bayern Munich.
Yeah, he came in and took over that club and won the Bundesliga twice with a really young team.
Yeah.
Because he had all these players like, Nuri Sahin and Goetze, and they were all like teenagers and early 20s at the time. So it was
very charismatic,
it was massive
as well, wasn't he? Again, he was someone who people grew to love really for what he did in terms of uniting that club.
Yeah.
And I think then the move to Liverpool felt the right fit at the right time almost.
Yeah, and he's that perfect manager that really seems to get the club he's at, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He seems to know exactly what the fans want. He knows what he needs to be done, how to, he's basically saved Liverpool and he saved Dortmund before and brought them massive success. Now, there's a talk recently about is he the best Liverpool manager of all time? I don't think he's at that level because he has his trophy cabinet probably doesn't reflect just how good a manager he is.
Yes.
But what he has done, he's brought about that attacking, gegenpressing, heavy metal football. He's made football attractive to watch again and exciting.
And what he's done is compete against Pep Guardiola in the Premier League at a time where actually, had he not been around a Liverpool manager and Liverpool not being as strong as they've been, actually probably Man City would have just steamrolled everyone in sight.
Yeah,
that season
like
where was it 97 points and he didn't win the title? 96 points, a huge points total. When you title every other year, and you push Man City so far and didn't quite get there, which must be painful to think about still as a Liverpool fan.
What do we reckon then? What are we thinking?
Well, how do you feel about him leaving?
Well, I'm obviously devastated. It's shocking, isn't it? But obviously, I think maybe Xabi Alonso will come in. You're wearing a Bayer Leverkusen top now.
Yeah, no, that's an accident. It's not hinting towards anything. But I think he'd be the perfect replacement in terms of someone who gets the club. Now, I think he does get the club. I think he's been incredibly important for Liverpool and influential for Liverpool. Probably actually not the most successful when you look at that trophy cabinet.
I think that the managers that come later in the video will have even more impressive. Well, for me, he'd be the GOAT, basically. I'm not going to put him there. So, influential?
I think he's influential on the club, Liverpool.
The club and Dortmund.
Yeah, and Dortmund.
Yeah, definitely.
Changing what was, both clubs in a bit of a sorry state at times and making them, both world forces.
Lovely. Right, okay. Let's move on then to the great rival of both the previous managers, Pep Guardiola. Now, this is a man that I know you have a lot of respect for, so I'm going to let you lead on this one.
Pep for me, that Barcelona side initially obviously came through the Barcelona B side, given the role of overhauling Barcelona. People say he walked into a good squad. He walked into a good squad and he pretty much ripped that squad up in some ways.
Got rid of Ronaldinho straight away, didn't he? Deco.
Moved on a load of the players that had done very well in the sort of early 2010s with him. And that squad there was brilliant that he built. Obviously, around Messi, and it's very difficult because, yes, he's had Messi. Then he moved on to Bayern Munich, had a very good squad. And now he's moved on to Man City and had a very good squad. And that's the thing that's always levelled at him. For me, what makes him so good is the influence he's had on football. He's been phenomenal. It's been absolutely phenomenal. When he came to the Premier League, people said he's not going to be able to do it here. Everything. You can find videos that still exist of that on Twitter, on YouTube, of people saying, okay, that's great what he's done elsewhere in the Bundesliga, in La Liga, but he cannot do that in the Premier League. And if you look at the standard he's risen, yes, with money spent. Yes, there's charges that overhang Man City. That's not on him. What's on him is the way he's changed football in the Premier League and the domination that we didn't think was really possible in the Premier League.
The way he's changed football is from, into a possession-based game now, isn't it? And he is the main man in instigating that, and he's inverted fullbacks, all those kind of things. It's not just that he wins trophies. He does come up with these tactical changes and decisions.
That's fine that he's not invented them. Often people say, "Well, he didn't invent inverted fullbacks. That was happening in the 50s."
Yeah,
it was, but he's bringing back something that happened in the 50s.
Exactly.
This is crazy, and he is obsessed. If you watch any documentary, he's obsessed.
There's a really good one at the moment, and I think you're right there. He's actually one of the first managers I can remember hearing about. He wants all the data now. He wants to watch all the games, and he's stays at watching Real Valladolid instead of doing what he should have been doing with his family. So he is one of these managers that goes to the next level. And I go on then. You can rank him for this one.
So for me, I'd put him in the GOAT for now. I'm happy we can discuss others as we get to them. But just in terms of 3 Champions Leagues, that treble, massive.
Yeah, he's won a treble
twice.
Before,
obviously with Barca and then with Man City. I understand the money argument and people can comment about it. But for me, in terms of influence, and I know there's recency bias in some ways, but influence at 3 big clubs is still sizable.
Yeah, okay. If you have your own ideas for this list, just please give it a go. It's in the description below as well, so please let us know what you think.
He's overrated? Stick him in the overrated category.
I bet there'll be a few who think that.
Yeah.
Right, let's go on to, one of our managers from the past now. It's Ernst Happel, Austrian manager, big in the late 60s, in the 70s and the 80s. So it was 3 decades of top-level management. A manager who won pretty much everything he could win.
At every club.
At every club. So he's not one of the managers that just stayed at the same club. He did go around. He won the European Cup with Feyenoord. He was, one of the first Dutch team to win it. Everyone often thinks that it was Ajax that won it first, but actually they did it even before them. He went, of course, to Hamburg in the 80s and won it with them as well. Yeah. So fantastic manager. And even in between that, he was at Club Brugge as well in
they were runners up in the European Cup, so which is an immense success as well. So league titles. If you look at anything about him, he won leagues everywhere he went. Very successful manager. Had a stint as an international manager. I know not look at internationals, but runner up in a World Cup as well.
Massive.
I think this is an easy success. Maybe he didn't influence the game massively, but in terms of success, you look at his trophy cabinet. He won something everywhere he went.
This is one of the ones that when we ask our Twitter followers who's the greatest manager of all time, often a lot of them will say Ernst Happel.
Yeah, people who remember him.
People really appreciate the football history. I feel like we can't put him in GOAT because we didn't really see him ourselves. He's definitely not overrated because his trophy cabinet speaks for itself. What do you think?
I think successful.
Successful?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put him in there.
Perhaps he didn't change football, but he did win everywhere he went.
Yeah. Hugely successful. Right, let's move on then to Bela Gutmann, so another manager from the 50s, 60s. Most famous for his job at Benfica, winning 2 European Cups there.
Back-to-back European Cups.
Spotting players like Eusebio. A huge thing. And his story to get to that point is what makes, I think, him become this legendary figure in the fact that he survived the Holocaust in the Second World War. Hungarian, of course, and then he comes through. And Hungarian football around that time after the war, booms, doesn't it? And it has this amazing revolution. But he obviously takes his biggest role in Portugal, Benfica. But this is your speciality. So go on, Bela Gutmann.
So think Mourinho of the 50s and 60s. He was very, very controversial in some ways. There's stories about him nailing rats to the door of directors, or maybe even the Hungarian FA, when he was unhappy, walking out of clubs. He walked out of Benfica after back-to-back European Cups because they wouldn't give him a pay rise, which probably he deserved. But incredibly successful. You think of the world of football at that time. Real Madrid won 5 European Cups in a row, and he breaks that dominance. He beats Barcelona in 61,
massive.
And then he beats Real Madrid when they make the final in 62. Incredibly successful. The Intercontinental Cup, which was important at the time, which is where the winner of the European Cup played the winner of the Copa Libertadores, and he won that. Very, very successful. Didn't have long spells. Very much like Mourinho. His line was the 3rd season's fatal. And it was. Everywhere you go, you look at his career, finishes that 3rd season in a bust-up. So for me, I think he's probably another successful one. He was influential on tactics. He did play a lot of, entertaining football, as it would be at the time. Was
massive.
Important in Hungary, but he wasn't the Hungary manager, which we'll come to when we think about international managers.
Yes.
So I think for me, it's again the trophy cabinet success.
Successful. Okay. You could argue for legendary, but let's pop there then. Okay. Yeah. Let's go on to another modern manager, Carlo Ancelotti. Now this, he is an amazing manager. I still can't believe that. He was at Everton just a few years ago.
That was mad,
how Everton managed to get Ancelotti in.
I'll never keep hold of him as well.
Yeah, and then he went back to Real Madrid, didn't he? Now, of course, great playing career. Then he does an amazing job at AC Milan, winning the European Cup in 2003, 2007. He loses in 2005, but I don't need to talk about that too much. He goes to Real Madrid. He does La Decima, doesn't he? It's him who brings that elusive 10th Champions League title to the Bernabeu. Then he does it again, doesn't he? A few more times. So what a manager is. Yeah. He's a modern legend,
and he spans so long. His career in management at the top level. Yes, he took that Everton job, But at the top level, he's still at Real Madrid. He's just extended his contract at Real Madrid. He is an incredibly successful manager. He is loved by a lot of the football world. Obviously, the famous eyebrow.
I was about to say that, yeah.
Don Carlo, because he's just such a cool guy as an old gent.
Yeah.
He still, connects with young football fans and young football players. But when you look at what he did at Milan and then at Real Madrid, two of the biggest clubs in the history of football, for me, he's one of the modern legends. I certainly think if you look back as legendary.
Well, I mean, European-wise, he's probably the best European Cup manager ever. He's better than Pep because he's won more European Cups. He's better than all of these, isn't he, really? Legendary.
I think he's our first legendary, and I think he'll be remembered like an absolute legend in 10, 15 years' time when he's retired.
Yeah, spot on. Okay, let's move on to Johan Cruyff. We talked about Johan Cruyff in our previous video, looking at the greatest footballers who aren't the GOAT.
Yeah.
We did mention in that video his managerial career. It's an incredible managerial career. Now, he's one of the best footballers of all time, but he is this ridiculously good manager because of what I'm going to probably already give it to him, but it's probably the influential category because of what he influenced to come. Like Pep Guardiola wouldn't be the manager he is now without what he learned from Johan Cruyff.
Yeah.
Cruyff's Barcelona team, that dream team he had, some incredible players under his control. And he brought them that first European Cup in '92, La Ligas as well. And he came in to a Barcelona that was in disarray in the mid-'80s. They weren't in a good state. They were overrun with hooliganism as well. There was all these incidents that were going on outside of the club. And they needed someone to come in, that figurehead, that legend of the club already, to come in and sort it all out. And he did. And he did it in his own style, his own methods. And he was one of those first managers that really promoted doing the same thing with the first team as you do with the under 8s. We all do the same system. So if someone in the first team gets injured and I need to bring up a reserve, they can come straight into that role. Yeah. What do you think?
Makes sense, doesn't it? And I think when we talk about people who were brilliant players and managers, Guardiola was decent. Ancelotti was decent.
Yeah.
Who was absolutely phenomenal as a player was Cruyff. As a manager was Cruyff. He's probably the best who's done both roles. And you said it, Pep considers him one of the best of all time and considers him incredibly influential, him and Bielsa, on his career. I think Cruyff, really, the Barcelona we see today is a lot thanks to Johan Cruyff.
Yeah, I think so.
Involved, in the boardroom as well. So yes, incredibly influential. I think he's legendary. He's just above influential in terms of
put there then.
What an icon he is.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go on to Sir Matt Busby, Man United legendary manager. Managed him for 25 years, from the 40s all the way up to the early 1970s. Of course, he's influential for the Busby Babes, his really young team that he, will probably go into win the European Cup in '58.
100%.
And of course had that, horrific air disaster in which a great number of the team died. Of course, he survives, and then over the next 10 years sets about to rebuild the entire club again from the ashes, and he does it with aplomb, and he wins the European Cup then 10 years later, '68, with Dennis Law, George Best, Bobby Charlton, 3 players that won the Ballon d'Or under him as well. I think Man United fans, he's a bit like Shankly to Liverpool, isn't he? He's that sort of, he made the club basically in the first place. Go on then, Matt Busby.
Appointed in 1945, just at the end of the Second World War.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Old Trafford needed rebuilding because it was bombed quite heavily.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
And they build the club after the Second World War, really. Were not in a very good place in the 30s. They come back in the 40s and grow into the 50s. As you say, the Busby Babes, as they're affectionately known, should have won a European trophy 10 years before the club did. That awful Munich air disaster. And rather than leave the club and be almost too broken to manage, he stays and totally rebuilds them in the shape of him. He models everything around the way he wants to play, and in 10 years becomes the first English club, just after Celtic win it as first British club.
Yes, of course, yeah.
The year before, in '67, '68, Matt Busby wins the first European Cup for a British side or English side, and it's incredibly important in that way in the history of our game. Before this, English clubs had not done very well at all in Europe.
They hadn't. So, the funny thing is, he's a player for Man City and Liverpool in his career, and then he becomes a Man United, icon as well.
He was also one of the first to have total control, a little bit like Sir Alex, who we'll come on to, and other managers here. He was someone who demanded and was given, from 45, total control over not just training, not just the playing style, but also transfers too.
Yeah,
previously it was done by
huge.
Boardroom committee. He comes in and goes, I want involvement in everything, like obviously Sir Alex and people like that ended up having too.
Right, where's he going then?
So he is a legend, but I think that's sort of more reserved for longer term success. He wins a lot. I think the influential tier next to Klopp in terms of the influence he had on the club, Man United.
Yeah,
like Klopp
building a club. Fab. Yeah, great reason in there. Right, let's go on to another Marmite manager, definitely back at least in the 70s, I'd say, and that's Brian Clough. I mean, the quotes, there's a million of quotes that he's come out with. I'll put one on the screen now. But fantastic manager.
Yeah.
What's great about Brian Clough is a lot of these managers, you say, they manage AC Milan or Liverpool or Man City or Man United, But he managed Derby, Nottingham Forest. They were his two and Leeds for a few days. Yeah. So they were his big clubs, and they weren't like, other than Leeds, but they weren't like, these are huge teams when he came into them. But what he did bring was incredible success, and, to teams that people wouldn't have thought were even capable of challenging.
To win the European Cup with Nottingham Forest.
Twice.
Yeah, unbelievable, isn't it? Absolutely unbelievable when you think about it. Signed a £1 million player, first £1 million player.
Yeah, Trevor Francis, yeah.
So I think actually, when you, again, talk to people who remember Clough, they cannot speak highly enough of him. Was very Marmite, very spiky in interviews and things like that.
If you're Don Revy.
Yes, fell out with numerous people, numerous members of the media.
Yeah.
Film about him isn't there that is very, very entertaining,
brilliant
really,
film.
Really good and worth a watch. He is really heroic in terms of the English game, I suppose. Maybe wider Europe. I don't know what European, and maybe if you're European and you know a lot about him, comment below. But I don't know if he'd be that widely known across Europe.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I guess he might be purely because he won two
European Cup.
But I think some people might put him in the overrated category. But I'm not going to put him there. What do you reckon?
They'd be risky to put him there.
We get a lot about that.
So let's put him as successful.
Successful.
Or was he influential?
He's influential.
Okay,
he's hugely influential.
Similar then to the other two that we've got there. Really, I suppose he built Forest.
Proper characters as well. Yeah, fab. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to Ernst Michael. So this is of course the manager of Ajax, famously, but also Barcelona team that Cruyff played for. So Cruyff followed him to Barcelona. Not going to go too much into that international management, but he, of course, is the manager of the Netherlands in 74 and in 88 when they were in the Euros. Probably you call him the father of total football. That incredible style of play. Come on then.
Yeah, he was incredibly successful again. Won lots wherever he went. But it's that influence on the game style across Europe really that he had. Everywhere he went had an impact. You read anything about him and people can't really say enough about how influential he was on tactical on people like Cruyff. He was sort of, like you said, the godfather of it all. He kicked it all off and people carried it on. Maybe himself didn't actually win a huge amount compared to some of them. Yeah. But he did start things in motion. Of course,
yeah. Oh, he's great, isn't he? I think, you ask Pep Guardiola who his influences are, he'll say Cruyff, and then going back even before he'd say Ernst Michaels as well, for that total football and then evolving into the modern day sort of tiki-taka.
I think, American football fans, so they have these coaching trees and you can almost track like a family tree, the coaching line back to people like Mike Shanahan, people like that. I think he's there. Michel's really, the coaching tree leads to Cruyff and that Cruyff leads to Guardiola. I think there's a...
And before Ernst Michaels, is a man called Jack Reynolds, an English manager. Yeah. I'm actually writing a third book at the moment, aren't we? Football's 50 most important clubs, and Ajax, spoiler, is in there. But yeah, doing a lot of work on that at the moment. So, Ernst Michaels, I think, has to go into influential.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay. Right, let's go on to 2 managers to go. 2 legendary managers, maybe. Right, let's go on. Sir Alex Ferguson.
Now, Sir Alex, for me, is one that we could talk about, and it's a spoiler, in that GOAT category.
Yeah.
On the basis of, when you talk about longevity in the game,
Oh, mental.
at the top level, this guy did it all. Man United, I don't know how many iterations and rebuilds of Man United he looked over. Obviously, helped by things like the Class of '92, an unbelievable youth team to come through. But he helped develop those. He was key in developing those. They still call him the boss, don't they? You watch anything of Gary Neville or
Beckham,
Scholes or Beckham or Keane. All of them talk about him with like adoration and love for what he did.
Like a father figure,
wasn't he? Like an absolute father figure. Controversial at times, fell out with the media at times.
Fact.
But like lots of those guys did, in some ways, that was part of his character. He dealt with the media. He developed English football into, and Man United really, into this global brand. Started by Busby and really nailed in when football went big, Premier League, things like that. Finished by Sir Alex.
Yeah, and what's really telling is that since he's left, so he won that final league in 2013 with a bit of an average team, really.
A team on the way down.
Van Persie basically won it, didn't he? Yeah. But and then since he's gone, they've been pretty awful for 11 years, haven't they? And they've not come really close to it in the league.
Struggled, and people didn't think this period of lack of success would last so long, but it almost proves how good he was, that he was able to win it. When you look at some of the squads he had, really terrible footballers. Now, you wouldn't consider greats in the Premier League.
No.
Won the Premier League run.
Right, 13 league titles as well. Couple of European Cups. Maybe his GOAT status is under threat purely because he didn't do it in Europe as much as he probably should have with the team he had.
Yeah.
Just 2 European Cups in, a long time. But he did do it with Aberdeen as well. He won the European Cup Winners' Cup with them, which was massive at the time because they were,
I think we could have a little influence on this, and this is fine. We want you to do the tier maker too. Neither of us were big Man United fans at all, and so I don't want to stick
overrated.
I'm going to stick with the legendary, but you can stick him as the first legend.
Legend.
Rank within legends. We can only have one GOAT.
Okay.
And I'm going to put him just behind Pep. You can challenge him and you can say he should be there, but he's class.
Last one then. Let's look at Bob Paisley then, Liverpool's legendary manager. Of course, this man, he was a player at the club. He then became Bill Shankly's assistant in the boot room, the famous boot room. Then he became a manager as well. Quite a quiet man. He wasn't really expected to be this, Shankly was his force of nature, and then Paisley was like this quiet genius in the side. However, when you talk to previous players who used to play under him, he could turn it on as well. Now his trophy cabinet speaks for itself, doesn't it? I mean, it's 9 years at Liverpool, I think it was, and he won, I think, 6 league titles, 3 European Cups, UEFA Cup, everything other than the FA Cup, 4 League Cups or 3 League Cups in a row. Ridiculously successful. A lot of people sometimes think about Paisley and Shankly in the same sort of level, but Shankly was there for a long time, and his trophy cabinet isn't that impressive. Shankly's role is more in just a bit like Busby, making Liverpool into Liverpool that we all know today. Yeah. But Paisley did bring that incredible success. He had the best team in the world in the 80s. He brought through youngsters. He brought through like Ian Rush, players that people didn't really think about much. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'll be very biased to this. But go on, what do you think?
I think you can stick him quite happily in the legendary category. I think he's legendary for the influence he had on the game, in the English game in the 80s, 70s, 80s. He was incredibly important to anyone, again, who remembers him. There's no doubt, obviously there's club rivalry and people will diss him for being Liverpool when they don't like Liverpool, because lots of people don't like Liverpool. But influential and successful, and therefore legendary.
Yeah, okay, just put him there then. Let's finish off with him there. You happy with our list?
I am. I'm gutted there's no Neil Warnock. best second tier manager of all time.
Yeah, okay.
Neil Warnock. But other than that, I think we
Roy Hodgson could have maybe made an appearance. Right, so we got Pep Guardiola is our greatest manager of all time. This is going to be incredibly controversial. So please give it a go yourself. The link is in the description below. We'd love to see what you can do. After you do it, send it to us on Twitter if you can at TFHBS. Thanks so much for joining us for this ranking video. We can't wait to do the next one. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.